This is the E-Tracker from Vintage Electric. It's got that really cool vintage feel, kind of like reminiscent of those old-time track motorcycle bikes. And really, I think the thing that sets it out is that battery casing right there. It's aluminum alloy casing. Inside are lithium-ion batteries, which is, high quality, lightweight. I love that this balances the weight, but it's also very powerful. It's like 52 volts, 12.5 amp hours. So there's significant juice in there. And then that battery is powering a Crystalite. I believe it's about a 3,000 watt motor. Now, there are two drive modes on this bike. And the first is sort of the standard legal USA mode, 750 watts, and it's limited to 20 miles per hour, so that this can kind of function as a bicycle. You could ride it around town, don't have to have licensing or insurance to do that. And then the other mode is up to 36 miles per hour, and you get that full 3,000 watts from the Crystalite hub. So it is a gearless direct drive hub motor. One of the benefits of that is you've got like a regeneration capability here. So if you press that button, it actually generates a little bit of electricity, and it works as like a motor brake. In addition to these fairly basic mechanical disc brakes here with 160 millimeter rotors. I'm actually gonna test ride another version of this bike where they put 180 millimeter rotors on it. The shop did, because they were like, we want something bigger. I don't think they had a problem doing that. It worked out pretty well. These again are just Avid mechanical disc brakes. If you're going fast, considering the size of this bike and the weight, it's about 74 pounds. I did a weighing earlier. Definitely one of the heavier bikes, but it is fairly well balanced, and it just has this beautiful aesthetic. And you get those extras like this aluminum fender that's mounted pretty well in here. You got the rack. There's a really cool saddlebag that can kind of clip onto the side right there, or you can sort of set something up yourself. Awesome Brooks saddle with these springs. It's really comfortable, and it's got these integrated LED lights, as well as this old-fashioned looking just circular headlight on the front. It says Xanadu. Pretty cool. Just gonna check out these tires here. These are 26 by 2.35 Schwalbe Fat Frank, and they are extra fat. This gives you that sense of like cushion. It smooths out the cracks when you're riding around, or maybe the potholes on the street, because this doesn't really have any suspension. There's no suspension fork. There's no suspension seat post. You've just got those springs and those extra big fat tires. And I love that they've actually got reflective sidewalls. That's going to give you a little bit of an extra visual footprint when you're riding, in addition to those lights and stuff. This is a single geared bike, so there's like one speed to pedal at, and when you're going slow, it kind of feels like heavy, and you have to put in a little more effort. And when you start going fast and you actually get up to 35 miles per hour off-road only, or if you register this as like a moped or something, but then you can't keep up. Like, you're trying to keep up. So I feel like they might do well to add a cassette at some point, or maybe you could add something to the bottom bracket, like a Schlumpf drive, or there's something on Kickstarter or Indiegogo that's like an internally geared like 3-speed. So there's some cool solutions out there, but it might change the aesthetic. And really, this thing's more like a scooter based on what I've seen, and that's probably the kind of people who are interested. There are a bunch of options for this bike, including pedelec. So of course you can just use the trigger throttle, but you can also get the upgrade and get this 12 sensor magnetic pedelec, just so that when you're pedaling, it actually responds to you. Again, I think you'll run into that sort of cadence issue where you're trying to keep up. It's just, there's limitations here, just like the electric scooters that I've reviewed, that I kind of comment and say, it's kind of heavy, there's only one gear. Well, at least these pedals, the crank arms are a little bit longer, and the bike isn't quite as heavy as some of those scooters. I like that, but you're still not getting a very bicycle-y bike. We've got these awesome Brooks leather grips with lockers on the ends right there. It's pretty cool. Here's the trigger throttle I was talking about earlier, so it's really easy to reach. Some people might prefer a twist throttle, but I actually prefer triggers because they sort of stay out of the way. They don't compromise your grip. And one thing I've noticed, however, is that when you stop on this bike, what they recommend, especially given the weight, given the speed that you might be traveling at, they say you should activate regen and brake at the same time. But I mean, if you see me trying to do that, especially given that these aren't hydraulic, end up taking several fingers off to pull the brake lever and try to press that button, my grip gets loose. That's one of the potential areas of improvement. I love regen. The button is fine. It reminds me of the Stealth Bomber, but just having to brake and do that, I guess you could pull this brake over here. It's the rear brake anyway, so that's the one I'd be relying on most frequently. I'd be braking over here, I'd be hitting regen right there, and hopefully I'm getting good stopping power. I guess just rounding this out, the Brooks saddle, the nice little leather accents on the rear rack, the grips, even these little like, I think those are meant to stop the fork from banging up your top tube here. I mean, it's just really cool. It's really nice. It looks nice, and it's actually functional. A bunch of wires coming out the bottom of the battery, and that they're not handled like super well. It's kind of ugly. Potentially gets in the way a little bit. To operate this bike, you have to put in the key, twist it, and then you're in on. And if you press this button, that's what activates the lights. So the button doesn't activate the bike, the key does, and you can take it out. So it's not like you're gonna kick the key or anything. You can't take the battery off this bike like you can with a lot of electric bikes. So that's another sort of, it's a con for me, because if you leave this in your garage, it gets really cold or hot, that is gonna degrade the battery over time. And if you wanted to use this for commuting to work or something and you're running low on battery, you have to bring the bike near an electrical outlet to charge it. So there's the charging port right there. Now, the good news is with all these bolts and stuff, I mean, someone would really have to go at it to try to steal this from you. So hopefully that's not a big concern. I like that they've got a bunch of different mounting points, and just the rack feels really sturdy. And they also have a bunch of different color choices. Oh, but before I get there, I wanted to comment on this. So this is actually where you can put in a fuse. I think like a 10 or a 15 amp fuse, and that's what changes this from sort of USA 750 watt 20 mile per hour up to 3000 watt 35 mile per hour. So it's just a little fuse that goes in there, and then you screw this cap back on, and that's what basically unlocks the super fast operation. But do be careful. Maybe even consider bicycle insurance. There's a company called Velosurance that does a pretty good job. I'd hate to see someone, if you get in a car accident with this, not only are you more vulnerable like a motorcycler would be if you hit a car, but you could also be legally liable, given that if it's not registered or licensed, you're operating an illegal vehicle in that situation. Decent kickstand. Okay, so coming back to some of the different options. So there are a bunch of different colors to choose from. You've got kind of like this Indian red. What we're looking at here is Excelsior blue, slate gray, and racing green. They also do custom color, and in order to get that, I think it's like $500 or $600 more, so you can pay a little bit extra if you want to do that. The next thing you get to pick is the tire color. So what we're looking at here is cream, but they also offer just standard black. Both of those, they don't cost extra, so that's kind of nice. You get the thumb throttle, which is included. We talked about that earlier. Or you can upgrade and get additional pedal assist, and that's $129 extra. And then of course there's Street Edition, which is what we're looking at here, and Race Edition you have to add $150 to get the little fuse, which is that extra piece there. So kind of keep that in mind depending on the type of riding you want to do. You can get with no rack if you don't think you need that, or the rack is like $290, and I think it looks really nice. This is pretty custom, really beautiful the way that they've integrated that. And I mentioned that LED light earlier. That also costs a little bit extra. It's $75, but adds an element of safety. And then they even have like an extra Brooks Challenger bag, like a little circular thing that can go on the bike. That's pretty cool. I wanted to show you how these panniers work. There's kind of this red button thing. You push it down, it kind of springs up like that, and then you can just lift them off. And there's that rear clip, so it slides back on real easy like that. Then you kind of have to lock them back down like that. So pretty cool. Got them on both sides here. And there is the hub motor in the rear. Again, being direct drive, I've noticed it's really quiet, really smooth. It doesn't quite have that like torquey zip feeling right from the start, but it really gets you going quickly. And one of the things I notice is that as I start riding, it can't really tell how fast you are going because there's no display panel up here, but that the that regen switch really comes in handy. I also noticed, it kind of surprised me at first. I was using the trigger throttle, and then I stopped. I kind of released on the trigger, and I noticed that I was still accelerating, and that's because this one does have the cadence sensing pedal assist. So I don't know, kind of keep that in mind. Definitely, again, definitely nice to have that cutoff there when you do the regen. So let's hop on, and enough talk. And we do have I think it's like a 10 amp fuse in there. We're all set that way. Actually, you might not be able to see it, but I'm going to activate the light real quick. Kind of show you up front. Yeah, woo! Looks good. And there's the LEDs in the rear. Looking great. Okay, here we go. Get the kickstand all taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and do pedal assist at first, and you can hear, kind of listen for it, how quickly it stops when I stop pedaling. Actually, pedal assist isn't working yet. Maybe you have to tap the throttle first. There we go. Okay. So not the most responsive on the pedal assist, and the fact that these brakes don't have a motor inhibitor, it's something to kind of keep in mind while you're riding. I'm actually pulling the brake right now and pedaling, and I'm fighting the motor. So in my opinion, that's kind of a design flaw, something they might want to take into consideration. Kind of hear the brake pads there a little bit. It almost feels safer if it didn't have pedal assist. I feel like I'd have more control. Yeah, it's just not super responsive when I stop pedaling, so I'm trying to kind of feel my way around the system here. Not using the throttle right now, I'm just pedaling under my own power. There we go, now pedal assist is kicking in. You can kind of hear it, a little bit of a delay there. good amount of cushion going over those bumps. A heavier bike. You definitely notice that. If you were riding this and you did run out of batteries, it would be all right to cruise along at a slower speed on these nice flat paved streets, but climbing hills and things might be a little bit of a challenge. I also noticed that they've got what looks to be a mounting point right here for adding like a kind of a chain guard or something, but I'm not seeing that. It looks like they do these in special editions, so this is number 87. So to me, the e-Tracker is really unique because it almost performs like a car in a sense. You know, I was riding around the neighborhoods. There's a 30 mile per hour speed limit. That's about how fast I was going. You would probably need to register this as a moped if you're, you know, running it with that fuse and you're operating at those higher top speeds. But it performed well. It was respected by cars. It even looks kind of like a motorcycle, and that felt good. You know, it puts this in a different class than low-speed electric bikes, okay? But at the same time, having those pedals, being able to just roll up and park it at a bike rack is really convenient, you know? And I cruised across the park a little bit ago, and I pedaled, and no one seemed to mind. It's just really quiet and sleek, and that's kind of the beauty of electric bikes in general, is that you don't have to cruise along with the cars. You can actually go and take the paths and sidewalks and stuff. This bike just gives you the choice. You know, do you want to behave like a car or do you want to behave like a bike? It's kind of up to you. And the tires, you know, being a little bit larger, these Schwalbe Fat Franks, they actually did absorb the bumps pretty well. There wasn't a whole lot of rattling going on. The fender's really well bolted on, so this was a good experience. You know, kind of grew on me, right? At first I was like, oh, it's so heavy, and you know, it's this high-speed thing, and the cadence sensor isn't super responsive, and the brakes aren't super responsive. They aren't cutting power to the motor. Those are still concerns, but in general, you know, for what it is, it's beautiful, and it offers something kind of unique. So, yep, that is the vintage electric e-Tracker. For the full write-up on this, including pictures, all the specs, and more info, I'll see you back at ElectricRideReview.com.